Hi guys, this is Lucky Luke for Poker VIP. This is the second installment of the Hot 75 review, which I was lucky enough to get first place in a few weeks ago. We stopped, I think, at 100, 200, and this is the very next hand. I'll just explain again that I'm going through every single hand in this one, quite quick fire, because we're obviously, looking at folded hands as well. Often when I'm reviewing a full speed, I will do it in Ultimate Replayer, which handily gives us the winning and losing hands we were involved in, and we just skip over those and have a look. But I do think that when reviewing turbos, it can be very useful and quite important from time to time to have a look at every single hand that we fold, which spots we don't take up, decide to take up, and why. And some of those will be mistakes on my part. I do think that in this tournament as a whole, having had a very quick glance over the hand history, that I knitted up quite hard in a few spots, and I don't think that's always justified. I think that's partly a product of the fact that I was multi-tabling quite hard during this. This would have been peak hours on my Sunday grind, so I probably had up to about 16 tables going during most of this. It may have tailed off to about 12 towards the end. I think, if I remember correctly, I had 14 tables going total when I hit the final table of this. So it does mean you're going to be making some suboptimal decisions, and in my case that might mean just not taking up every steal that I should be. So we need to look at that and correct it. I need to look at it and correct it for my own game, and it should help you guys to get an idea of what spots are worth taking. So that's the reason for this approach. Of course, we get the added benefit that we do have stats as well from the Poker Tracker replayer. So this is a 3x open from Alex Rommel. He's very active, so we might be tempted to try to do something here. I mean, if he's doing it as if the stacks were slightly different and he was doing this as a 2x open, I would jam it in his face, but I would need to have more like 20 blinds rather than 28. 27, and I would like to I would like to be facing a 2x open. I think with the 3x open, unless we know that it's his standard open, it looks like perhaps a poorer player being strong. It may be that he just wants loads of folds and he's just hyper aggressive, and he finds that it works for him because people do give him too much credit, which again tempts us to do something. We could make an argument in that case here for a 3-bet fold, to put it to 14 and fold to a shove. But again, I don't think we have enough history. It's quite a big chunk of our stack, and he seems hyper aggressive, so he may 4-bet jam pretty wide as well. So I don't think it's an optimal spot to do something here, but his stats do kind of tempt me to look for those kind of options as well. Okay, so moving along, just going to cycle through some of the hands where we obviously can't get involved, just trash hands. But this one, for example, yeah, I do remember this, that I think this is too nitty of a fold on my part. Of course, we may be concerned about players hanging around in a general sense, or playing back at us with these kind of stacks, but really, in this particular spot, Squire's a little too deep for reshoving very often. Poker Alien certainly is. He's got 34 blinds. P the Legend is so shallow that he's not going to feel that he has a lot of fold equity against us when he does reshove. He might feel he has a little bit, so he's going to be relatively tight, or should be relatively tight on his reshoving range as well, which means we're still going to get plenty of folds, and this is an easy bet fold for us, an easy steal. In fact, these guys have got good fold to steal statistics as well. 70%. That's 9 out of 13, 2 out of 2, and 9 out of 11. So I'm just throwing money away by not stealing in this particular spot, and that's a multi-tabling error on my part for sure. Okay, so moving on, I'm sure we'll find a few more of those spots. We're getting to the kind of point where there are a lot of reshove stacks, but that shouldn't necessarily worry you unless you've seen particular players being very active reshoving. You shouldn't necessarily give people credit for the ability to reshove wide just because they've got the right stack for it. Okay, so in this spot we open the King-Queen suited, we get 2 calls. I think I don't really like my sizing here given the board texture. I think we should go a lot smaller, and I also think that if we were heads up, versus, for example, Alex Rommel. In some cases, if I think he's a bad player or a player inclined towards too much aggression, I might just check back here and let him fire turns, because there aren't really many turns that are going to scare us. Give him an opportunity to bluff, and if he misinterprets our delayed c-bet, if he does check again, we can bet the turn and perhaps get value, and still maybe even get stacks in on the river. So I might like that line heads up. I don't really like it so much multi-way, because people are going to be more cautious. They're going to take fewer punts with bluffs on the turn. It's not going to work as well. But I don't, my sizing, I think it's just too big here. We go just short of half pot here, and I really think we should go smaller. I think I like really quite small, like 675, 695, maybe something like that. Just try to tease out a call, a speculative call from someone. But yeah, we don't get the action this time. And obviously stepping out of the way on that hand. So let's see if we miss any more steals, this kind of spot. That I think is a fine fold with the 7-4 off. You don't have to take every hand. Generally not stealing with total trash, especially at these kind of stack depths. This one, however, I think is important to pull up as another example. I think I understand precisely why I'm making this particular error of a fold, which I think it is an error, because I have my 16 tables. I see lots and lots of reshove stacks behind. I mean, hard corrupt is too shallow to call him a reshove stack, and poker alien is a little on the large side, but these three guys have perfect reshove stacks. So let's just pause here to talk for a moment about what we mean by perfect reshove stack. Okay, a perfect reshove stack is going to be in the big blind range where they don't have too many chips, whereby it becomes an unsavory kind of proposition for them to shove them all in terms of they're risking, I don't know, 35 blinds to win a blind or two. It becomes, for various reasons, it becomes a less appealing option. One is that people are going to call against them much more tightly, so they're not going to get as much action from the right ranges that they need. Another is an argument about stack utility, that it's a kind of wasteful approach with stack utility, and with those stack depths you should be 3-bet calling, 3-bet folding, and these kind of things a lot more than you are doing any kind of 3-bet shoving. But the classic 3-bet shoving range would tend to be, which includes semi-bluffs and stuff like that, which isn't just for pure value, would tend to be, say, 15 to 25 blinds effective. You can see it a little higher and a little lower sometimes, and you do still have a little bit of fold equity, sometimes even as low as 10 big blinds, but it's going to be very little amount usually. Okay, so when hard corrupt jams, he's not going to have any fold equity, meaning I'm not going to be folding anything that I've opened when he jams, pretty much, because I'm going to be getting good odds. Okay, so let's just quickly calculate what would those odds be if I opened here and he jammed his 8 blinds. What equity, what would we need to call him? Okay, how often would we need to win for it to be a good option to call him? So presume he shoves and everybody else folds. He's got, say, let's just do a very quick little bit of maths about this and just practice this, because it's a very useful thing for you guys to be doing yourself. So he jams his 2400, say, okay, and there's also 450 in blinds. 450 in blinds and 360 in the middle. Let's just call that 350 and keep these numbers kind of round, saves time. So 800 in blinds and antes. So the total then is 3,200 when we win, and we have to call 2,400. Okay, now the very quickest way to do this kind of maths on the fly is just to divide 2,400 by the combination of these two numbers, so which is 5, 6. Okay, so we need to win 42% of the time, 42.8% of the time. to break even. So yeah, as these numbers get smaller, you can see that it becomes harder and harder to find a fold. Okay, let's just make it a little bit smaller then, and let's give him 2,000. Let's give him a stack of 2,000. Or even, let's give him a really small stack just for the sake of the example. We give him a stack of 1,800 plus the 800 in the middle. Okay, so when we win, we win 2,600, and it's 1,800 to call. Okay, so let's do them at 1,800 divided by 3,800 plus 600, 4,400. So now we need 40%. Okay, 40.9%. Okay, so obviously as we do this process, we find that we need less and less equity. We're going to hardly ever fold against him because we're only going to need to be right, 40 in the actual case of his stack, 42.8% of the time to break even. Now, if we run a poker stove against a range with, I don't know, say weak suited ace, for example, and we have 42.8% exactly versus his assumed range, then it's still a fold because it's break even. But if we have anything like a couple of percent equity there, we can just stick around. Okay, so we need to have a sense of what we're doing against him. But what we mean by then the perfect reshove stack is something around this amount, 15 to 18 blinds. It would just be ideal. They're going to have lots of fold equity against us. They're going to be able to semi-bluff it, so to mix in some stuff that plays okay post-flop against us when we do call them. It still has enough equity as as part of a range to be shoving. So good players will be shoving a lot. And it's a tournament with a number of good players, but we still don't have that much evidence that these guys are actually doing it. I mean, this guy has, he's 3-bet fairly actively. This guy hasn't got, we don't have any hands on him. This guy has 3-bet fairly minimally. So, we don't necessarily have to be that afraid of it just yet, and I think we probably should still be opening this, okay? If they all had 3-bet stats a bit more like Zareta, I think it would be okay to just, skip it. Alright, so that's my thinking on that hand. So again, another missed open, really, I think. Okay. Now this one, we are missing a player. So I think actually technically I can open this one as well. If the big blind goes all in, then we can just call. This is a good example actually of what I was just running the numbers on previously. Okay, if he goes all in, it's another 1,500 plus the blinds and antes, which we already calculated were 800. They haven't gone up, or have they? Let's say 450, 450. Say call it 800. So this is what we win. Okay, so we're winning 2,300 when we call, and we have to call 15, and again 1,500 divided by the total of the two amounts is 3.8. So we need to be right 39% of the time. Okay, to break even, and we undoubtedly, I think, would be with the hand as strong as Queen Jack off. When he's this shallow, he should be jamming it in really pretty wide. Any kind of semi-decent hand. Okay, so we can open there. I wouldn't normally open the first two seats with Queen Jack off. But given that there's somebody sitting out, we're effectively one seat further around anyway, so I think that's okay to open. So, moving along. Again, another spot just to get out of the way. And some more trash. So we'll just again run over some of these to get to the good stuff. So I move tables, and we just get out of the way here. This is kind of interesting. If I had, I'll just move this guy's stats out of the way so you can see we've got the ace-5 off. If I had a hand that I would normally jam in this position with these stacks, I would be even happier than normal jamming because this guy's so shallow. He should have a pretty damn wide range. The fact that he's not first to act, he does have two more hands he can wait, so he may have something kind of value-ish, but he should still be enormously wide enough that we can get value from ace-5 off. The problem is the stack's behind us, that we don't want to shove in and then meet a better hand behind us. So I would typically, if I was going to shove this anyway, I would shove it. But let's just have a quick look at these push fold charts for which I think I discussed last week, which assume certain things. We shouldn't use these as a Bible. We should use them as a reference point at most. Very important that, because you don't want to become a bot when it comes to push fold. You'll make lots and lots of mistakes if you do. So these charts I'm about to pull up, they assume perfect calling on our opponent's part, and they assume equal stacks, so we have to make adjustments. But nonetheless, hijack +1 with 15 effective with antes of 12.5. We can just have a quick look at what that hypothetical range is, or the kind of game theory optimal range. And hijack +1 is ace 10 off. Okay, so it's quite a gap. Now, it's making assumptions which we need to adjust to, but in this case, people are, in some cases, a little deeper than effective, which means they'll be calling us a little bit wider, and we should be perhaps a little bit tighter than the chart would suggest. So, yeah, just another reason to agree with the chart in this case. So yeah, I mean, even if I had something a little less good than ace 10 off, I would probably isolate shove it. If I had ace 9 off or ace 8 off, or a suited ace a little lower than that, because this guy's giving us extra value compared to just the value we'd have if we were open shoving. So we can adjust our range, but I don't think I want to adjust it as much as that. I'd probably shove ace 5 suited there. Okay, so moving along. Obviously, we've got no real information except from old games on these guys. Oh, we moved again after just 2 hands, so it doesn't matter to try to get reads on those players. We seem to be moving around an awful lot, in fact. So it does happen occasionally in tournaments. You get zapped from one table to another, especially in turbos. Got to think on our feet. We've been, on a very short stack for a while, so we're just surviving. We are going to double up soon, I believe, and start to build that stack again. So, very standard jam. Just talking about what range would I jam with, what range would I induce with here, meaning open, in order to try to get somebody to shove back in my face. When we're sitting in the hijack, I would usually rather induce a bit deeper and a little later position, and I'd probably do it with a suited ace 7. I'd probably start inducing with offsuits at about ace 9 off. Again, it very much depends on the villains. I'm just talking against unknowns. Whenever I'm not specifying villains, I'm assuming unknowns. Okay, I'm just talking about defaults versus unknowns. And the question about where you draw that line is all about how you calculate how you do against that range, whether you want more fold equity versus showdown equity against a specified range. Okay, so here I'm just keeping it very simple and keeping it push fold. We're also very shallow to try to induce. A lot of players will think we look stronger. If they're any good, they may think we look stronger when we open rather than when we shove. Okay, so again, it depends how you perceive the strength of your table. Okay, so we ran okay in that hand. We get the double up that I was anticipating coming up soon. And now again, I think this is a good fold. I think we're just too early position. Again, lots of stacks that can reshove. We don't know how the table's playing because we're new to it. It's a marginal hand in bad position, so just going to get out of the way. I'm assuming we don't play our big blind here, and and move along. So I think someone got knocked out and we skipped the small blind there. Now we have a very easy spot where undergun jams his 9 big blinds. We've got ace king. There's really nothing we need to say about this one other than to note that we ran good again, as you have to do in turbos, and hit the river card we needed. And I think the action gets a little bit more frequent at this point. Now, this is kind of an interesting sizing. I actually quite like this here. I mean, normally when we've got 20 to 30 big blinds effective versus several stacks, I would generally just 2x as a rule. But I do like mixing in the occasional 2.5x, or perhaps a 2.3x would be fine. Just when in those spots where I have a hand which it's worth opening, but I'm not desperate to see calls, where I would like to have a few more folds, I would like a bit more fold equity, I would like people to rejam less because it puts me in kind of awkward spots versus certain stacks. I think it would be close to calling it off versus the 2 shorties here given positions if they jammed it on me, and folding to the other players to any aggression here. But I certainly am very happy to get a few more folds in here, so I think that's my logic for making it 2.5x. I think people are going to play more straightforwardly against me, so it's something I would never do with Monster here, because I think we just get more folds. Obviously versus very observant players and very aggressive and good observant players, you might even get more steals, more re-steals from them, because they think you're doing that and therefore they think they're going to get a lot of folds and get more money because you've put more in. So there is a counterpoint to that versus very competent players, but otherwise it works pretty well. Again, that's what's called playing exploitably. I am playing in a way that's vulnerable to being exploited by good players, but it doesn't matter if I don't think I'm facing enough of them or enough of very active players at this particular table. Okay, and I don't think we can assume they're all super good just because it's hot 75. I think the standard's going to be better than smaller stakes, but still, I still think it works in this case. So just opening, and we are getting some aggression from big stack, just dropping it. I think that's super standard. I don't think there's anything else we can do there. And pick up the Kojak suited. Now this would be just kind of the bottom of my opening range normally in this kind of spot under the gun. I guess again I'm leaning on the side of nittery, and I'm deciding to just drop it. I just got 3-bet and had to fold, so I think that's one reason. It's a game dynamic thing. So yeah, we step out the way for that one. And of course we're getting out the way here as well once someone jams. So cycle through a few of these dead hands. Deciding, sorry, let's just check that one that we saw. We're deciding, I did say I wanted to pay attention to what we steal and what we don't steal in this review. And we are sidestepping this spot. Now, again, I mean, we have some stats from old games of these guys. This guy likes to fold to steals. This guy doesn't and has 12 blinds. And this guy is an unknown looking kind of tight. So if it wasn't for Mind Gamer, I'd be opening this all day. But I think Mind Gamer is going to be shoving a lot. So, I'm not necessarily convinced. I'd have to run some detailed numbers on it to check whether, whether that outweighs the other two. It may be that we can still do it, but I decided in game it was too marginal anyway. Okay. I'm sure even though I have a lot of tables, I am trying to glance, always trying to glance at opponents' stacks. Again, first 2 seats round, ace-10 off would normally be a fold for me, especially deeper stacked. I think when we're this shallow, we can kind of use it as a blocker EP steal kind of hand, and we can stack off versus Idolaf here, who's so short. I wouldn't stack off versus Mind Gamer, I don't think. So yeah, I don't mind an open here. It'll look strong. We won't get played back at that much by your average table. So yeah, but we don't do it in this instance. And let's just see what's coming up next. We'll just go through a few more minutes of this episode. We're getting up to the bigger blinds now. This is super standard, of course. Absolutely no two ways about it. Remember, he's not shoving 40 blinds, he's shoving 15, 14, 15, because that's the effective stack, that's what he's risking. And, we can call him with a pretty wide range here. I mean, I don't think I'm folding any suited aces here. I'm not folding many offsuit aces here. I'm not folding King Queen. I'm not folding King 10 suited. I'm not folding, I'm calling pretty wide range here. Calling any pair. Probably calling the as we looked at last week. Probably calling some of those. Yeah, it's 15, so I'd have to run some numbers to talk about Queen highs, but certainly this is very high up on the list. So yeah, we get a nice hand against a weaker ace. So we've got a bit of a stack now. Now this is a spot I actually think I looked over last week with my own coach, who was arguing for an open. I think again, I can be lean on the nitty side when it comes to opening the small blind, especially when my opponent has a stack they can very easily reshove. But my coach was talking me through some numbers and suggesting that this is still a fine open versus most players, unless you know that they're very active. So that's something I'm going to be looking at in later weeks as I refine my own approach to. I do like opening the small blind, especially versus quiet players, a little deeper, but I think I'm a little too shy, reluctant to do that in this kind of spot. Now this one is a spot, again, I think this is a mistake on my part. I do think that we should be 3-betting here. We can just 3-bet to kind of 4,800, big enough that we can stack off versus Mind Gamer comfortably if he shoves, and fold to Troubadour. In game I did make a fold because I decided that although I thought that Manu Sas would probably fold often enough to make it profitable, I was concerned about the guys behind getting involved, especially Mind Gamer, and robbing us of some value. But I think actually when you analyze it in the cold light of day and look at how shallow he is effective to the amount we're going to put in as a 3-bet, it's not going to matter, and we can just manage it like that. So I think this is a really good spot to 3-bet. We would fold to pressure from Manu Sas or a 4-bet or something like this, because we are basically doing it as a semi bluff, or almost as just a blocker bluff. We've got the ace, so there are fewer aces in his range. So it's a good spot. We're on the button. It's always good to have absolute position when we're making that kind of play. I think I don't mind this fold. I just think there's too much in these stacks behind to really kind of isolate jam. Such a weak hand. I would probably isolate it with ace-5 suited. Okay, and yeah, I think this is the section of the game where I do get a bit nitty versus these reshove stacks when I don't really have a good enough reason to. We are getting to the point where a couple of these stacks are relatively shallow, so it becomes a bit more awkward for us to steal from them. And it very much depends on their tendencies, and these two guys, Fane and Mind Gamer, do have fairly active stats, so I don't hate the fold actually here. We are going to get it shoved in our face quite a lot. If it was a little bit of a better hand, I could just jam it. If it was 8-9 suited, I could just jam it for value, but this one is not quite good enough with these effective stacks. So we'll try to get another couple of orbits in here in this installment. Just race through a few of these. As you can see, the blinds are leaping up, as they have a tendency to do in these kind of games. Again, we just get some easy money here. I don't know what Kamajan is doing by calling these 4 blinds and then folding to our shove. It's just appalling waste of his chips, but it does mean that we get a very nice big pot there. Only kind of having to fade 7s to win it, which is obviously sweet. So got up to a nice stack for a turbo now, and I did. I don't know when I got into pole position, but I did hold first for quite a while. I seem to remember during the last kind of few tables, which is always a nice way to an easy way to win a tournament, isn't it? Get into first place and stay there is the old adage, I believe. So it kind of makes up for all those times that you get into first and then just nosedive and end up in 10th or something. This is, yeah, okay, so this is a nice spot for a call, I think. Let's just run the maths on this one, and then we'll finish up for this session. Okay, so we're giving let's just put our hand in here first, Queen Jack off, and this player is jamming exactly 10 blinds basically. So let's just give him the Nash range. Let's just say he's probably even wider than this, but let's just say he's shoving kind of game theory optimal style. So let's drop that into a notepad and just use these numbers as an example. Okay, so these numbers are saying, okay, he's shoving 77%. So we'll plug 77% in, and we'll correct stove, which doesn't use kind of natural ranges. Okay, so any pair, any ace, any king, any queen, any jack, 10-2 suited, 10-5 off, 9-2 suited, 9-6 off, 8-4 suited, ace-6 off, 7-3 suited, 7-5 off, 6-3 suited, 6-5 off, 5-2 suited. Okay, so this is what this particular chart recommends as a plus EV shoving range versus perfect calling. Now we cover him by quite a bit, so we're going to tighten it up a bit, because he should expect to get called slightly wider versus better. So let's just be generous and let's just take a lot of the bottom of that out. Okay. Yeah, let's just assume he's a little bit on the nitty side. Okay, and give him something like that, 70% instead of 77%. Okay. We've got 54%, and Pokerstars should tell us how much we need to break even. Yeah, so 43. We need 43% to break even. So if we have 46, 47%, say, or even less in a turbo, probably we can just safely make the call. Okay, whereas versus this range, we actually have plenty. We have tons. Okay, so it's actually an easy call by the maths. Okay guys, so that's going to be it for this session. So we're leaving off at 1,500, 3,000 blinds. I hope it's been useful, enjoyable. As usual, any questions, feel free to find me a PM or make a comment. And yeah, good luck out there. See you soon. Cheers.